Good morning, everyone. Today we are starting a new Masechta. Excuse me. Mishna Bikurim, Perek Aleph, Chapter 1, Mishnah Aleph, Mishnah 1. And I'd like to dedicate this morning's learning in memory of my mother, Mrs. Shlomis Rabinowitz, Shlomis Bas Rav Yaakov Eliezer. And today's learning is also sponsored by Rochelle and Burton Goldner to commemorate the yard site of Rochelle's late husband, Ephraim ben Moshe Aryeh. They're also sponsoring today's learning. So Bikurim is a mitzvah. The Torah tells us that from the first fruits that ripen of the 7 species of fruits that the land of Israel is praised for, which are wheat, barley, olives, pomegranates, grapes, dates, and figs. From those 7, there is a mitzvah to bring bikurim, to bring from the first ones that ripen. When the fruits start ripening, you designate which are going to be for bikurim. When they ripen, you bring them to the Beis Hamikdash. You hand them in a basket to the Kohen. The Kohen puts them in front of the altar, the Mizbeach. The person bringing the Bikurim recites certain verses from the Torah in which he thanks Hashem for the land that he was given in the land of Israel and the fruits that is produced. And then these Bikurim belong to the Kohen. So we have 2 parts of the mitzvah. There's bringing the Bikurim, bringing the fruits to the Beis Hamikdash, and there's Mikra Bikurim, the reading of Bikurim, the reading of the verses that one recites when bringing the Bikurim. So our Mishnah begins, Yesh Mevian Bikurim Bikurim. You'll have people that will bring Bikurim and read the special reading that's done, the passages of Bikurim. Mevian V'loi Bikurim. There are those who bring but don't read. V'yeshan Mevian. There are those who don't even bring. And it's this last part that now the Mishnah elaborates on. Elu she'ena Mevian. These are the people who do not bring Bikurim at all. He plants a tree in his property, and then he bends it into someone else's property, or into a public property. So what's happening here is he's got a tree on his property. What he does then is he digs a hole, basically I guess with a tunnel, and he takes a branch and he bends the branch. He puts the branch into the hole, bends it so that now it goes underground, and then it comes up again on the other side. Now, in this case, the other side that it came up on was not his property. It was either someone else's property or it was public property. Now, when you do this, the goal is that the part of the tree that comes up is eventually going to take root on its own and become its own tree. But that's what this person did. So he has something growing in his field, in his own property. Then he bends a branch into the ground to come up again from another part of the ground. And in this case, it came up not in his property, but in either a private property or a public property, but it's not his property. Same thing if he bends from a tree growing on someone else's property, or it's growing on public property, into his. The tree starting on, let's say, the public property, he takes a branch, puts it underground, and brings up the end from another part of the ground. In this case, it's starting on his property, but ending up in his property. So that's the end of that. That is the example of someone who does not bring at all. And the reason is because the Torah says that the Bikurim has to come from your land. It means it has to nourish completely from your land. In this case, that's not what's happening. Because in this case, what's happening is that, either way, whether it's the original tree or the new tree, they're going to be nourishing from a property that's not yours. If the tree was starting in your property and then the new tree is in another property, but since they're all still connected,
So it comes out that even the original tree is nourishing from the other ground that the other side comes up in, and therefore that's not called nourishing that's not called nourishing completely from your ground, or the other way around. When it comes up in your ground, but that's still nourishing because it's connected to the other tree. It's still connecting from the other ground that's not yours, and therefore, if it is not growing, if it's not nourishing completely from your property, then it's not called the fruits of admascha of your land, because it's someone else's land that's contributing to these fruits. And therefore, in that situation, from either tree, we're not bringing bikurim, because either one is nourishing from an area that doesn't belong to you. Now, the next case of the Mishnah is the following. You plant within your property, and you bent the branch, and when you brought it back up, on a different part of the ground. It was still in your property. However, but how do we call this? Okay, but there is, that literally translated, derech hayachid means the path of an individual, and derech harah means the path of the public. In this case, it is not a private path. It doesn't belong to somebody else. It's just two different types of paths. They're both public. One is called the path of the individual because not that many people can pass on this at one time. It's narrow. Derech harabim is a wider road where many people can pass at the same time. Either way, the point is that you basically have a situation where you've got properties on each side of a road. The roads are public. You are basically making a tunnel under that road to be able to have the branch that started from the original tree on one side, on your property from one side of the road, and put that branch going under the road and coming up on the other side. So you've got the original tree and the new tree both in your property, but the branch is going under public property. So here we have a situation like this. So the Mishna, we get to read it. One who plants within his property brings up the other side of the branch within his own property, meaning a different property of his. And a path, a singular path, or the path of many is in between, is in the middle. The first opinion of the Mishnah is such a person does not bring bikurim. Rabbi Yehuda says, in this case, in this kind of situation, one would bring. So we have to try to understand what's the argument here. So let's take Rabbi Yehuda's opinion first, or let's start this way. The question really that revolves between these two opinions in the Mishnah, the question really is, was this person allowed to dig that tunnel under the public property to get the branch to go there and eventually come up on the other side? Was he allowed to do that or not? Is it because it's public property, does that allow you to use it that way? Now, clearly, you cannot use it in that way if it's going to ruin the road. If it weakens the road and it can't therefore hold the traffic that it could have because you dug this tunnel under it, that you're not allowed to do. But in a situation where you dig the tunnel and it's permissible to do, so Rabbi Yehuda, the second opinion, says, look, this is public property. It's not private property. It's a public property, and in essence, either the original tree is in your property and the new tree is in your property. The question is this middle part is going through public area. Now, that piece of that area is contributing to the nourishment of both trees. And it should therefore come out that the nourishment is coming from the public. Why would we say it's different than the case before where the branch came up in public property? The point is public property is nourishing. Isn't public property nourishing here also when the branch is going through the public property? And the answer to that is that it's not nourishing much from there. So number one, you're doing what's permitted to do. You have a right to be here. Number two, the nourishment from it is not much. And therefore, this is enough to be called admascha, your land, for the purposes of bikurim. This is enough. It's in a land that you're allowed to use. the nourishment is not really not much coming from the nourishment to the fruit's not really coming much from here. The primary nourishment is coming from for either tree from where it is, and in those cases, it's both on your property. The question just is that part in the middle, that giving some nourishment, does that, and it's public, does that take away? So Rabbi Yehuda says, no, that level, it doesn't take away. It's permissible, and it's not much. Therefore, it's still called your land. Tanakama, on the other hand, his opinion is the following. He holds just 1 second, please. Oh, okay. All right. So the Tanakama, the first opinion, who said you don't bring, he's of the opinion that we say that you're not allowed to do that. You're not allowed to dig that you're not allowed to put that branch under the public area. Just because it's public area, it doesn't allow you to do it. And therefore, since it comes out that this is the little bit of nourishment that's coming from somewhere that is not yours, and you have no permissibility, and you have no permission to be there, therefore now that's called nourishment coming not from your land, and therefore it says disqualifies these trees from the mitzvah bikurim. So according to the Rabbi Yehuda says, since the nourishment isn't much and it's permitted for you to be here, that's called your land enough. According to the Tanakama, maybe the nourishment's not much, but you're not allowed to be here. And therefore that nourishment is coming it can't be called coming from your land, and therefore it disqualifies both trees from the mitzvah because both trees are getting some nourishment from it. Now the Bartanura points out that even Rabbi Yehuda who says that you bring bikurim, his wording is kazeh maybe. In this case, you bring. He does not say you bring and read. That implies that even Rabbi Yehuda agrees that even if there is a mitzvah to bring bikurim, but you will not be doing the special reading. And that's because for the special reading, it says, a person says when he makes that, when he does that reading, the wording that he says is, the land that you gave me. That has a strong connotation. The land that you gave to me. Now, let's say you dig a tunnel in this public property, and someone else decides, hey, I want to use that tunnel. You can't stop them. It doesn't become yours. You may have a right to use that, but you can't stop someone else from using it. And therefore, if you don't have that kind of ownership on it, that you can hold someone back from using it, you can't call it the land that you gave me. Maybe to be called your land in a general way, that it could be, and therefore it's enough, according to Yehuda, to be able to bring bikurim. But to say the words, the land that you gave me, that already has a stronger connotation of ownership, and therefore, being that it may be permitted for you to dig this tunnel in the public property, but you can't stop someone else from using it, therefore, that's not enough ownership to be able to do the mitzvah of the reading of the passages that comes along when bringing the bikurim. We continue with the laws of Rechilas in the Chavetz Chaim, Klal Vav, chapter 6, Siftes, paragraph 9. Now, somebody told you that someone said something about you, did something to you, wants to do something to you, and you see evidence. Shanira al yadim she'emesu masha sipru loy olav. That this evidence appears to support what they told you about this person. That he said or did whatever they said he did. Now the question is, does that give you the right to believe it? Right? We've seen situations where we say that you can believe the rechilas or not believe the rechilas. Even in situations where you can act upon it to protect yourself, you still can't believe it. So how about now? We had before the person, if we said nowadays doesn't apply, but the person who you believe like two witnesses. There we said you could believe it. What about here? So here the Chavetz Chaim says that he discussed this already before, but he's going to again repeat what he said before regarding evidence that he said previously in the laws of Lashon Harah. that there are 5 conditions that have to be met. Aleph, the first, this evidence has to be an evidence that cannot be that it's called this way. The result of the evidence, or based on the evidence, if you could still give him the benefit of the doubt and judge him in a positive way that he didn't mean to hurt you, you have to do that. If it has to be that the evidence, for you to be able to rely on the evidence to believe it, it would have to be that it's basically an evidence that says there's no way to interpret what he did other than bad. Because otherwise, there's no point that it's true. But at the end of the day, the evidence just tells you, just brings out something, but you can still give him the benefit of the doubt. You can still judge him favorably. Then, this evidence that it's true that he said something doesn't really make a difference from the point of what the person who told it to you means. Because if the evidence still allows you to judge him favorably, that he wasn't trying to say anything negative or do anything negative to you, then you can't believe it in a negative way. Base 2. It has to be that this evidence clearly relates and brings out the truth of this matter, not just a little bit. It has to be able to completely prove that it's true. Gimel 3. The evidence has to be seen by you yourself, not because other people told you about it. Dalit 4. Only if there's going to be some kind of constructive purpose from this, then you can use the evidence. Because if it's irrelevant, then you're not even supposed to be listening to this. So if there's no relevance to the story, then there's no permission even to listen to it. So evidence makes no difference. Hey, 5. At the end of the day, this evidence can only allow you to believe it. But they just go telling others about it, you have no right based on that. And no matter what, the proof, this evidence that you even have a right to believe, would never give you a right to cause him any kind of loss, a monetary loss, to strike him, to beat him, or to basically exempt yourself from any of the responsibilities that you have to this person. All it would do is it would just basically alleviate or make it easier for you to deal with of not having to work on not believing it. You'd be allowed to believe it, but again, it has to be relevant. It has to be evidence that completely proves the point to the negative, and then again, it only allows you to believe, not to do anything much more than that. Have a wonderful day.